Hello, everyone. It's Tuesday. Thank you for joining me on LinkedIn. I have an awesome guest. Sorry, James, I will introduce you properly, but you're right. I hear Tesco's put up the Tesco meal deal prices. So
Well,
we live in a strange world. But meal deals aside, because you are an architectural professional that I admire from the industry. But James, I'm going to bring up your full name and details here. So James Lee Burgess, FRSA member like myself. Need to ask you how
indeed.
to use the membership. But how are you, James? Are you okay?
I'm great. Very good. Looking forward to the football later.
Are you? Well, I won't keep you too long then. I was last night. Everyone was beeping in London and all that stuff. But I'm going to give you a virtual round of applause. Thank you for being
Thank you
here.
very much.
So James, you went to Cardiff University, and
Yeah,
so you were, as I called you earlier, you're an adopted fellow Welshman, but a Cornish man yourself. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, James, and what your current business is, and maybe a little bit of your background in architecture as well?
sure. Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on, Stephen. Great to be here. Um, yeah, so I am an architect, ARB registered still hanging in there, and studied at Cardiff for the whole degree. Um, Brought up in Cornwall, made my way to Cardiff, then went to London to do my year out and spent 10 years in London after that, once qualified, doing social housing, lots of mixed use projects. Then I ended up moving to sunny Norfolk, which is where I am
Hmm.
now after having kids, and carried on my architecture here for like, God, it's probably about 13 years. And then I had the opportunity to set up my own practice, and I did that in 2019. And originally, that was more of a traditional architecture practice, but always had the vision to move into augmented reality and mixed reality because it seemed like a bit of a game change, well, a game changer for the industry. And we invested very heavily in something called Microsoft HoloLens, which is a mixed reality device, HoloLens
Okay.
2,
Yeah.
and deployed that on sites and began our journey into mixed reality. And then after that, AR. So, yeah, and now I'm about a year ago, we changed full direction to AR and MR development studio, focusing on the built environment. So yeah, it's all fairly new still, but going well.
Amazing. And so I just got to comment quickly, James, that if you can hear like banging above me, I've got some roofers who are like trying to
Oh,
fix the roof that in the building I'm in. So there's a 5% chance that like a builder will just fall down and join us. join join
well,
us on the live stream, which
if
unfortunately
you
will
hear some,
be, yeah, it won't be mixed or augmented. It will be a
no,
real person, unfortunately, smashing the
a
physical
real danger.
environment. Yeah,
Well,
but
I'm next to the entry door to the studio here, and I've realised that there's a beep that occurs every time somebody comes through. So apologies if that starts to
it's all right. Don't worry,
annoy
you're in
you.
good company. Unprofessional letting the builders know and the door that goes on. But it's very interesting what you do, James, because in the last few weeks, I've been looking for architecture careers in the metaverse, and you dropped me a really nice message where you talked about, augmented and mixed reality, and you kind of teased with the M word, and you wouldn't be alone in that because in terms of the metaverse, I think there's definitely something exciting about it, but at the same time, everyone's got a different opinion as they
Mm,
should do as practicing architects. But we'll go on to the metaverse a bit later. What is very interesting though, and I'll bring your website in a bit, and we can see some of the work you've done with clients with BT. But we augmented reality. So I remember the best example I can think of augmented reality, James, is Pokemon Go. Me
yep.
and my ex-partner knocking around London trying to find Pokemons. I had a glitch actually where you could ride the DLR in London because it's very slow. Sometimes I would catch a Pokemon sitting on the
Brilliant.
DLR, you know what I'm saying? But that
Yeah.
was one of the best examples that I could think of. What is in terms of construction use, so Pokemon's aside, if someone's thinking augmented reality, what's that got to do with construction. Do you want to give a little bit of a flavor of the kind of things that you
Sure.
see good use cases of it as?
Yeah, well, I think the ability to overlay data and 3D content on the real environment around you safely
Mm,
is the main use case here, especially in terms of construction. And the work we did using HoloLens 2 and working with Trimble as well, Trimble Connect on those devices, allowed us to use mixed reality on construction sites. It's a because of the ability, because you're always aware of your environment, you're able to overlay service layouts, proposed structures, etc. You can also do remote assist, so you're doing a video call direct into the headset, allows you to
okay.
place content live on site. So that was a good example and a good trial. So I think there's opportunities there, but then I think also moving it right back to the front end, I think there's a real opportunity in terms of how we revolutionize things like planning and public consultation by
Oh yeah,
placing proposals, you know, on site, so people can look at these communities, can sort of dissect them a bit more as opposed to being stuck on the page. I think there's a real opportunity to just, tell some more engaging stories and also, move things out of the 2D world. I think that's the key thing. So moving beyond the frame, I think is the phrase. So not constantly working either on a screen or on a piece of paper, because a lot of people struggle with that still. So
yeah.
it's quite, access is important. Accessibility is good.
Very interesting. So, how do you differentiate between augmented reality (AR) and mixed reality (MR)? So, I used to think wrongly they were the same thing, James. But
Well, I mean, I think they're pretty interchangeable. There's so many different
right,
like acronyms now, isn't there? I mean, a lot of people I speak to call AR AI. So there's a real there's a lot of these phrases sloshing around. I mean, mixed reality, I think, is more. It's like a sort of that's a combination between VR and AR. So it's kind of immersive, but it's in your real environment, and you can explore it in. You can walk around objects, you can interact with them. I think AR, I think if you were looking for a definition, is more based on screen-based interaction. So
yeah,
I'd say, I mean, mixed reality kind of came about through Microsoft trying to market the HoloLens, which is a cool device, and it is very different to using a phone, for example.
yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that's kind of where we sit on that.
Oh,
Yeah.
very cool. Do you remember the Google
Mm.
glasses? You know, I got invited to their big showroom in London, which at the
Oh,
time was King's Cross when it was being done. And I was, going around and I was kind of translating stuff that you see and it was cool. What happened to it, James? It kind of died, didn't it? It didn't take off
yeah.
commercially.
No, well, that's always one of the big reference points for
Yeah.
things like AR glasses, which you're going to see a bit of an explosion of AR glasses in the next year or two.
Oh, really?
It's kind of already started. A lot of the main hardware providers are developing devices. I mean, HoloLens led the way, but I think with Google Glass, I mean, Google have released a second generation Google Glass, but it's more aimed at enterprise, so work scenarios.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't think people were ready for it. I don't think the public were ready for it, and also, it was kind of not ready for public release.
yeah.
So a few things went
It
wrong,
it
and
it felt like that. It felt like a fun
yeah,
tech demo, not something I would
but I
genuinely buy, you know?
but one of the
Yeah.
main things was the fact that it had a camera on it,
Mm.
and I think in public adoption of AR, a lot of AR relies on creating a map of your environment to place content. So you need a camera presently.
Right.
And I think that social contract in public of having a device which has a camera on it on your face is something that needs to be got over. So I think
Yeah.
the Ray-Ban glasses, which have a camera in, and you tap to record, there's a similar issue there. So it's like a privacy thing, which I think was one of the ultimate issues. And
Mm.
nowadays we're a lot more used to people recording environments and taking photos, but I think that's still that social contract thing of having a pair of glasses that could be recording you at any time still needs
Mm.
to be looked at. So that's an interesting one.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, because I'll show people what you do in a bit because I thought it was really interesting, right? But last thing before you go onto it, and you'll laugh because when I was a part two, I was playing around with my Connect at the time. You know,
Hmm.
Connect came out, and everyone who thought they were super cool hackers like me, who weren't really, they basically would download the SDK pack on the Connect and try to do some experiments. But that was I mean, again, I think the Connect was ahead of its time because it wasn't very
Yeah,
accurate, James, because the cameras were. Having said that, though, you could start to read the room for like £100 at the
yep,
time and get a sense of, like you say, that in the middle because it was kind of AR and it was really it was you could make an augmented version of where you were and it kind of read the room and stuff. So
yeah,
I'm
totally.
glad I'm glad things have moved on, but the
Well,
Connect again is on the list next to the Google glasses, right?
indeed, yeah. I mean, Microsoft have a bit of a history of going down dead ends at the wrong time, but hopefully, I think all of their stuff is really important though, because I think the Connect has informed the HoloLens, for example,
Mm,
and I've seen some really cool stuff where people are using Connects to transmit holograms into the HoloLens. So you've
okay.
got a live transmitting of a person playing a guitar, for example, those kind of
Mm,
things. So that's like holo porting, that kind of technology. So yeah, it's interesting how these things sort of pop up and then slip away when the sort of like the context isn't right. Definitely.
yeah, it's true. Well, I'm going to bring up your website quickly, which is
Okay.
urban-xr.com. Let me just Blue Peter style bring it up here. Hey, there we go. I've got all my tabs here. Luckily, I haven't got anything naughty there. But I should have put the Chrome tab, but we're fine. So
Phew.
yeah, exactly. I'm quite boring. I always say to my partner, I'm like, you can look in my phone. It's just work there, James. So nothing that exciting and
No.
exciting in the tabs. But here's one of the videos on your
Yeah.
website that loads up straight away. I'd love to hear what this project is in your
Yeah. So
words.
this was a real bit of a landmark project for us, really. We beginning of this year. Sorry, God, your brain gets addled with all
It's
of
been a
this
long year
stuff.
for you,
It's
James, huh?
it was this year, and BT approached us to have a look at doing an AR experience which covered smart cities. So smart cities is
Hmm.
one of their they have some software that pulls together Internet of Things and data for cities. So this was looking to kind of give a visual representation of that piece of software and their abilities. So we got this model of London and used our visual positioning system, which is provided by Immersal, which is a great product. That's one of the things that has enabled us to do these kind of larger scale, um, very accurate AR experiences. So this doesn't work off a QR code. This works off the device recognizing the context it's in, and then it loads in these different elements of screens and 3D models. So this was used as a presentation tool at their customer experience center at their brand new offices in London at One Bram, and yeah, went down a storm.
Oh,
It
it looks
covered
brilliant.
covered smart city data, smart ports, which is one of their areas that they like to focus on, and also agri-tech. So yeah,
I love
some
it. I was getting excited there. I think you've got a missed opportunity, James, for battleships. In your
yes,
AR. I was seeing the stats for that, and I was like, that is a way to bring battleships back in the 2022 or 2023 shortly. That'd be
yeah,
pretty
I'm on
cool.
that. Let's talk about that after.
You can have that idea for free. Just send me a
Excellent,
copy, but you can keep all the
brilliant.
royalties. I mean, this looks really cool. Now, what I'd love as well, because you mentioned at the start in particular, and I think it's important. You are a qualified architect, which is
Mhm.
great. So, what caught your eye with these platforms then, James? Because now you mentioned before you've done some traditional architecture. You are an architect practice in some shape or form, but you've made the decision and founding director and stuff to go right. I'm going to lean
Mm.
into these awesome
Yeah,
presentations, this cool stuff you're doing at BT, these interactive displays which they use. So why did you decide to do that then?
Yeah, well, very good question. I think at the start, it was it became apparent to me that as soon as you could place like large scale interactive 3D content in the spaces that we occupy every day, like our towns and cities, that this was going to be a whole new area of, urban design, essentially. I think that's probably the best way to look at it. And, you can
Mm,
influence how people use space and interact with it via these kind of AR experiences. So the concept that um, I mean, when I started on this journey in 2019, that kind of wasn't possible. So it was, I was quite
yeah.
lucky in a way. These technologies have advanced and pushed forward at the same time as the business. Um, so yeah, being able to do, augmented reality exhibitions, hidden history was one of the things I'm really passionate about. Being able to
Okay.
use AR for, storytelling. That's one of the most important things. I think being able to tell different narratives within urban environments about history, about data, pollution, those kind of things in an accessible way, which I think AR can bring to all of those kind of spaces, indoor and outdoor as well. So
Yeah.
as soon as you can leverage 3D content outdoors accurately and to a good resolution, that's when it becomes very interesting, and that's where we're focusing our efforts now
Yeah.
as a business. Definitely,
Yeah.
the stuff with the exhibition kind of thing is really good as well because that demonstrates the technology. And we've recently installed that London experience again at BT's headquarters in Suffolk.
I love
But
it.
so yeah, so that was the main thing. It was like the ability to overlay and influence how urban spaces function through AR was one of the most exciting things, and that's still the direction we're moving in.
I love it. Look at this crazy
Oh
little
yeah,
video. I'll just turn the sound off so I don't get copyright striked or whatever. I've had
that's
that
all right.
happen
We made
before.
the music for this.
Oh yeah, good, good. But not every architect understands that, right? Basically,
Yeah, I
listeners,
know.
if you put your favorite track on to a YouTube video, and if I play it, then I can get copyright infringed, which is
Well, there's an
not
interesting
fun.
story about the
You
music
know,
on that video because it was actually done by my cousin's
I
band
can get away with it. Is it? Here we go.
who
See if it
disbanded,
comes up.
but it'll probably just
The band disbanded. I
yeah.
don't know. It's probably be someone in their bedroom going, "Oh, there you go. I'm gonna get the architecture social." Well, I only get a few views on the
Yeah.
YouTube channel. LinkedIn gets a lot, but yeah,
Mm.
if someone wants my 30 views or whatever on YouTube and the pennies, then
They
they
can
can
they
fight.
can have it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this project, we did this with the Ipswich Business Improvement District last year. So this was at the start of last year. This came in. So the brief from the client was to do some kind of positive messaging using AR, and also we came up with the concept of kind of like decorating historic buildings and making them, eye catching, which we did.
Hmm.
And we did this overlay with the thank you key workers message because obviously at the time we were in COVID. This never got
Oh,
released as a
cool.
public app, but this uses the visual positioning system and it's super stable. You can look at it from different directions, and the idea was that we could also allow people to select more information on the history of the town hall. So it was kind of this getting people to look up at the building, take note of how interesting it was, hopefully, and then delve a bit deeper into things like the carvings and the statues that were on the building. So that was kind of our first heritage concept, as it were. So yeah,
I love it. I
we
love
need to
it.
do that as a public app at some point.
Yeah, I would try blowing it up bigger, but then the danger is, James, if I make it full screen, I
No,
don't get to see you and in control of everything. Yeah, so the beautiful audience could be hijacking it. What is this last one? Sorry, am I
no,
allowed to
this is a
click
Christmas.
everything?
So this is in the same place. This is a Christmas app.
Ooh.
Because I mean, I think there's a thing here in terms of outdoor experiences for town centres and high streets. So Ipswich are really forward looking as a town, and they commissioned us to do this public app. So this looks at giving an experience on their main square at Cornhill. and we came up with the idea of a reindeer called Sammy, who
Hey.
walks down the steps and can provide some selfie
Ah,
opportunities.
this is closer
And
to Pokemon, isn't it? You
yeah,
know?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
nice.
and then loads of any number of people can watch this at the same time. So it can be a crowd pleaser. And then yeah, Sammy flies around the square,
Oh, that's
and it's
cool.
quite good fun trying to keep it in focus. So this was, even though this is like sort of quite frivolous, like a Christmas themed app, I think the complexity and the amount of rendering that's going on here is pretty
Yeah,
complicated, and it just
yeah.
showed that we can do some pretty exciting things.
Oh, look at that. No, that
So
is
yeah,
nice. And you could have both ends of the scale, you know?
exactly.
That's my view. And also
Yeah,
I've got two little nieces. Well, they're grown up more now, James, but like, you know, this is the kind of thing I could see them playing with on their phone. Because otherwise, once you've got two little nieces, you know, if they're not happy, they're gonna let you know.
exactly,
And and
exactly.
and I've learned parenting one on one shortcut, which people say is the best thing or the worst thing is give your child a tablet, you know, and then generally
That's it.
survive a Christmas lunch or something. But
Well, I
brilliant.
desperate I desperately tried to get my daughters to be, on the show reel for this, but obviously they were like, "No, Dad, we're not doing that.
Nah,
That is
yeah,
far too embarrassing."
you gotta do far more bribery on that, James. You gotta get a lot more McDonald meals or
Yeah,
something
I
to
mean, we have done some interesting stuff more in the architecture side of things, but unfortunately, it's kind of all under NDA. But
that's
I can
fine.
I can't show any videos on it. But we did do some really really good stuff, honestly, in Sunderland, looking at a new development that's going up there by the riverside, and we managed to put the proposed master plan, which is in a lot of detail, huge model, on the site. And we did do a walk around with George Clark from the TV, and he was using the app, and it worked. It was really impressive. So I think this whole idea of presenting proposed developments using this technology is going to be something for the future for sure.
Mm,
And I don't think many people realise that the technology is kind of there now to use.
yeah,
You've got platforms like Niantic, who made Pokemon Go. They've got their plugins for AR, which is really good. And you've also got Snap from Snapchat. They're leading the
okay,
way in lots of AR, but they're all looking at this world scale content that you can place permanently in outdoor or indoor scenarios.
yeah,
Um, and we can do that now because the company we work with, Immersal, they're free to use, and it's a really good product. Difficult to get to grips with, but once you do, you can do stuff like the reindeer and that kind of thing, and a model.
yeah.
So yeah,
Very
but it
cool. What I was going to ask is because obviously, I mean, you're now dealing with complicated jobs, and if someone needs someone to do some complicated or grandiose job, then cool, speak to you guys. For architects that kind of want to dip their toes in the areas, you mentioned now one or two platforms as well. If you were starting out again, or if people are kind of curious watching this, I mean, where's a nice way into the world without being overwhelmed, James, you know?
I think looking at stuff that Unity does. Unity is a game engine, so that's
Yep.
kind of like a focal point for a lot of for all the work we do, really. So those kind of game engines, I kind of know my way around it, but I don't get in the hard nosed end of it in terms of coding and things like that.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
think
yeah.
I think that a lot of one of the other reasons I got into this was because being an architect, we're working with 3D models and 3D content all the time. We use CAD. BIM is super complicated, all that kind of stuff. So this moving towards using a gaming engine and physics and things like that is kind of, I don't think for an architect, because of their background and training, it's not too much of a massive shift.
Not too
To be
much.
fair,
Okay.
you can get an overview, which is why I think this kind of potential career direction is open to architects for sure. It does require some upskilling, but
Yeah.
the way I found it is that I basically look to get the opportunities in, and then I work with a team of really great developers called Unity developers, and then I have a guy called Eggbox Studios help me out with 3D content. So kind of like it's not a permanent team, but we work regularly together, and yeah, I try and pull it all together with my
Mm,
architectural project management skills
I
and
love it.
collaborative working, because we're all used to that, working in
Mm,
teams and collaborating. It's no different in the tech world. That's still a thing.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, but I think, yeah,
You're
Unity is a good starting point. There's also a really good sort of free to use AR platform called Worldcast, which I'll give a plug to. It's worth checking out. It allows you to make um, placeable AR experiences for free, and also you can place content fairly roughly in the real world. So it's not super accurate, but there's those kind of things that can be done. So yeah.
nice. So you can. There's a few good tips for dipping your feet into it. So I can hear my roofers now scrubbing my roof. James,
Is that the
you,
time to?
no, we'll keep going a bit, but if you need me to go louder, just say,
I
and
can't hear
uh,
them.
good. Maybe this microphone's paying itself off with the noise isolation. I've got a question that's popped up from someone in the audience,
Ah,
James, and it's more of a technical question. I think you touched upon it a little bit in your answer before, where Daniel says, "Is this software, or maybe it's a bit more bigger than that? Is AR or mixed reality capable of utilizing other plugins to overlay a 3D model? Question mark. Just thinking about how it could be used on
mhm,
site to show a Revit model
mm,
or ACASIM model in the
yeah,
correct location. What's your
yeah. So,
thoughts on that, James?
well, we did exactly this in Sunderland. We took I mean, it won't take a native Revit model. The key thing is getting the 3D model into Unity, the game engine. So once you get it in there and kind of working, you can then deploy it using a visual positioning system or a plug-in SDK to Unity.
Mm,
So our workflow for that was basically getting a what do we use? We use an FBX file to go into Unity. So generally, you have to convert to FBX and do maybe some little bits of rationalization, but it should come in okay. And then using for us the plugin by Immersal, you can then push out a test app, but it's all via done apps. So you kind of need to know a little bit about how to get an app published. We use Apple a lot because we can publish stuff on TestFlight, but that's where I have a bit more of a gray area on publishing apps, I must admit.
oh,
But in a way, it's not super complicated. And we did that with a very complicated master plan model, a lot of detail by Proctor Matthews on that site, so that
very
worked.
interesting. You will laugh years ago. Maybe I was one of the OGs in the space because in Manchester during my part two, part of our project had augmented reality, and we were looking at a town called Burstham and the noise
Mm,
pollution and stuff. So I loaded up, got all the data and loaded it up in the Cry engine, James, right? Cry engine. I know now it's a Unity and Unreal is where the cool kids are
mm,
playing, but back then it was the Cry engine. But I
right.
learned quite quickly how you need to optimize the model, and if you just shove a BIM model into there, it will have 10 million triangles, and the game engine will crawl to a halt. So
Yes.
you have to backwards engineer the models, which is an art form in itself because you've got to know what you can take from and what you can't, and get
Yeah.
it's triangles, isn't it? It's all
Yeah.
triangles.
Polygons. Yeah.
Yeah.
Polygons. Yeah. No, that's absolutely right. So we've tested successfully with like sort of millions of polygons, but we did do some test work in central London. Again, I can't
Mm,
name the client, but it was for a huge skyscraper in central London, and
cool.
we got the Revit model, but we did have to strip all of the internals out of it because when the developers were trying to get that into Unity, it just kind of flopped over basically. So
Mm, it
yeah,
died.
that's one of the risks, and it's not smooth yet. I mean, in terms of the HoloLens and using Trimble Connect, you can put Revit files into it, but again, there's a restriction on the HoloLens to on the headset itself because it can be
Yeah.
a standalone thing to 10,000 polygons, which is not a lot. Um, but one of the projects we're looking at now is looking to try and combine the AR plugins with remote rendering. So that's where we can take content held on an edge server and render it into the headset over an edge, Wi-Fi connection essentially, and then that releases the render power because the headset can render in 4K, so it can do a lot of detail. It's just that you got to shift the processing power to an edge computer,
Yeah.
which is that'll be the next thing, essentially cloud rendering and edge compute. So
There you go. So that's the next thing. Now,
yeah,
the kind of the topic that brought this all together is because I was posting some metaverse content,
yeah.
and as you said, the M word. So, James, what's your thoughts on current forays into the architecture metaverse? And you can, we're all friends here. You can tell us what the unfiltered version. What's your thoughts on what's happening?
Well, I think it's like a double-edged sword, the metaverse, isn't it? I think I don't know what it is, but I know it isn't just VR and it isn't just virtual worlds. So, I would make a strong argument that includes AR. And I think this overlaying of data on the real world and digital twins is going to be, that is going to be a future direction for this conversation, 100%. I
Yeah.
don't, I don't, I mean, even though we're called XR, extended reality, we haven't done a lot of VR work purely because I haven't really sought it out. I think there's lots of companies doing that at the moment, and I think there's a misconception that the metaverse is in a VR headset and it's all about Ready Player One and those kind of things. Um, I think I
Yeah.
think I think there's I think what we're talking about here is the developing a 3D language that we can use in many different situations and exploring without borders. I think that's, even though I said I don't know what the metaverse is, I think that's kind of the direction we're going into. Obviously,
Yeah.
the 3D internet is something that's rolled out quite a lot, but I think that just as much applies to doing stuff in our real world. Um, sometimes I can't get my head around the fact that we should use immense server power to create virtual worlds when we've got a real world here, which would take a lot of time to model and a lot of effort.
Yeah.
So if we can enhance what we have and engage people with the world around us using AI, I think and
Oh,
stories for sure. So yeah, the metaverse. I think it's a good thing and it's a great conversation to be having. And it kind of got kicked off by Facebook, didn't it? Really,
yeah.
when they went for Meta. And it's interesting. I read an article today that said that the R&D budget is primarily now focused on AR glasses at Meta. So
Mm.
I think
They
that's a
they
telling
had a
a
they've
telling
had a lot
potential
of cats,
direction
haven't
change.
they? Sorry, James. I don't know if I cut over you then. It
Yes,
was there was a bit of lag here, and I can't tell if it's my roofers or if
there was.
it's
Yeah,
someone downloading on your end. You know,
don't know. I am on an office Wi-Fi, so it could be me.
so, someone's downloading some naughty torrents in the background, huh? Well, I think I think we covered a lot of the bases there. What I was going to say um, is there? Do you have any questions for me or anything at all at the moment?
Yeah, well, I'd be interested in. I think actually, I'm just gonna add one more thing onto my metaverse rant.
Please go ahead.
I think, I think there's a similarity potentially between because we saw NFTs. Obviously, if you kept track of the whole NFT buzz and things like that.
Yeah,
So that was like a classic example, I think, of people in people attaching a real world metric to something like, okay, we can make a JPEG rare and buyable. And now everybody thinks that NFTs are just about buying bits of JPEGs online, but actually there's the whole blockchain thing and non-fungible tokens goes much deeper than that.
yeah,
There's a lot more to it. But that's a classic example where something gets hijacked by a kind of like a real world metric. And I think the thing we've got to remember with the metaverse is that I think a lot of people have jumped on this virtual world thing because they can kind of get their heads around a virtual copy of a space, or making things in a virtual environment.
Mm.
Um, and I think what we're going to find is this: we're going to definitely slide back towards this potentially more complex question of overlaying data in our environment and in our homes as well, because that's the direction. Certainly, Apple probably going to blow it apart in the next 2 years, I think, with what they come up with. So we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
Um, but in terms of my questions to you, I think well, in terms of architects working in the metaverse, I mean, have you had a lot of feedback on that, and have you had anybody that's looking into AR from that side?
Yeah, good question. So first one with architects working in the metaverse, I think like everything, it depends how ballsy, if I can say that word. I think I can say ballsy without LinkedIn like
I'm fine.
censoring me. But if you're ballsy as an entrepreneur, then you kind of got to go in 110%. So there's
Mm,
a lot of architects I see, James, who maybe they work their day job and they do these awesome projects, and that tends to be most of the architects at the moment. Yet there are one or two entrepreneurial companies I'm familiar with, such as Spaces and Sunken Blimps. It's all kind of cool
yeah,
names.
yeah.
And who else? So decent architecture do stuff, but they do work as well. And I think that, for instance, Sunken Blimps quite impressive. I had them on my podcast,
Mm,
and where they're really impressive is that they're profitable. They charge their clients a
mm,
lot of money for these virtual spaces,
mm,
which is great because it's proof of concept.
yeah.
But they are phenomenal,
Mm,
and they're cutting edge. And I think because they've rolled the dice, James, and they've gone all in, like you set up a company, they've just made it, and they're going for it, and they're
yeah.
innovating in the space, and therefore, right now they're doing really well. But I think that the question is it easy to monetize stuff in the metaverse or NFTs? And the answer, I don't think it is. I think it's really hard. And a quick example of that is that I experimented with NFTs,
Mm,
and luckily it was not my core business. So it was just a bit of experimentation, James.
mm.
Just getting my head around the
Yeah, sure, yeah.
concept. But I couldn't really make a business out of it, and I think that's the big question. So to answer what you said, there are some architects designing in the metaverse which are doing really well and profitable, but I do think the space is still very fragile and very
Yeah.
new, and there will be a bubble that's going to pop. And I think that a few key players will really grow in the space and be the de facto one. So, for example, Zaha Hadid is also, they have a department which specifically keeps an eye on this stuff. But I think it's still way too early, and I think that
Mm,
like crypto's getting wobbles and stuff. I think NFTs and the metaverse will have a big wobble. And for example, last last thing I'd like to touch on that point is like there's so many metaverse platforms, and it's like
yeah.
which one's going to be the one that wins, and is it Sandbox, is it Decentraland? I don't know if you've been in Decentraland, but I was kind of like, I wasn't particularly wowed. It wasn't like me putting on Ready Player One, right? And I'm
No.
like,
Yeah.
but then Spatial, which has less
Mm,
blockchain and stuff, is a really good app in terms of, because I think the accessibility is amazing on Spatial, because you can load it up on your Android or your TV, and you can go in the virtual reality. And you touched upon that earlier with headsets. It's like I've got a HTC Vive headset. It's a pain in the ass to set that thing up all the time, James. You know,
I can't
and
use them. I
yeah, and
get
also,
spun out.
so
So
stuff like,
accessibility is an issue. Yeah.
yeah, and like you could have a client and you could set something up, but what happens if they move something? You have to be there, you have to watch it. So very fiddly things get in the HTC Vive. They're amazing, but like you said, it's very fiddly and not accessible. So I think there there is something in it, but we will see what the next few months mention. You know.
Yeah, well, I remember years ago when Second Life and launched and things like
Yeah,
that,
totally,
And someone, people were saying, oh, maybe there's work in that for architects and things like that. Well, that was, God, was that like 2000 and I don't know, was it 2006 or something like that? I can't remember. It was a
Yeah.
long time ago, and it's still going. So that was the kind of the original sort of
Well, the Second
attempt at
Life
metaverse.
creator is making his own metaverse now, James. But I don't know
Ah,
what's
yeah,
happened. He's got his eye on it. But you're right. I used to, go on all the old chat rooms and the Second Life, and it's a bit weird, but also a bit fun. Like, you know what I mean?
yeah,
You go on, you can upset someone if you mistreat their house and stuff. Like ooh, moving around. So it's a strange little world. I tell you the other bit on that subject, which is mad, because the gaming industry is so
mm,
prolific. And I mean, I've played video games even when they were uncool, James. When you had to like lie, they'd be like, "What's your hobbies?" I'd be like, "I don't know, rugby." And then I was like, "I don't know what a PC game is, right?" So it was uncool back then, but now the video game industry is
oh
like
yeah,
Call of Duty, millions, millions. You talked about earlier, Unity is a game engine,
yeah,
but there's a lot of construction and stuff that's built upon the technologies of the game industry. And what I was going to say is one quick point where there's Eve Online is like a space
mm,
game, and
yeah,
it was never really for me. But people buy spaceships for like hundreds of thousands of pounds on that platform. So
yeah,
yeah, and they can be from like 20 quid to 100 quid. And there was like one starship with like loads of places to wine and dine your guests and stuff. And it was like, it sold for something like 400 grand. And now, don't quote me on the exact numbers, but it's out there. I'll try to put the link into it after this. However, people buy these spaces online, and that's where I
yeah,
think it's funny. It's all crazy until someone pays it, and then I'm like, well, if someone's paid it,
yeah.
then there is an industry there, and I do think that there is roles for architects to create in the metaverse or different game platforms. But I'm just not convinced I know which one it is yet,
Yeah,
which
I
will be
know.
the one.
It's very, but I think it's a very tough, I mean, it's really, yeah, good point on gaming industry because I mean, interestingly, I've been doing a couple of bits with gaming course locally in Norfolk, so that side of the industry is interested in what we're doing in terms of a commercialization and using gaming engines to deliver commercial stuff, um, which is interesting. But I don't really get much engagement from the architectural side of things, which is kind of understandable because I think just on that point, I think there's a lot. If you're an architect and you've got a profession and there's some stability there. I mean, I experienced this as well. It's like leaving that path. Well, you'll know about this, and doing something different is very scary, and
Mm,
you get this massive imposter syndrome thing, and some people are like, well, what's this person doing? Why are they even attempting to do this kind of thing?
mm,
So it is a scary area to get into, and I understand that not everybody's going to have the the belief to do that. But I think you're right. In the next everything's 5 to 10 years in this space, isn't it? But I think it's happening. And I think, but the interesting thing about gaming is that there's a lot of gaming people out there that already make amazing spaces
yeah,
in games. So, but I think where architects can have the advantage is this merging of the real world and AR and mixed reality, because we know how the real world works. We know how people behave in spaces. So it's curating how those interventions, digital interventions in the future will affect how spaces work and how they function. I think that's a key point, definitely.
yeah. I could not agree more. So we watch this space, we watch the dreaded M word, and we see where
Yeah.
augmented and virtual reality goes there. Is there any last questions you wanted to ask me, James, at all about anything?
No school prediction for England, Wales.
I'm not a huge follower of sports. It's just outed me on public, haven't I?
Outrage.
I get, it make you laugh. I get on teams and like my parents every now and then be like, "Come on, Wales," and seems like we're hanging in there for dear life. But
We'll go for a draw.
I've got to support Wales,
Oh, of
and
course.
even though I live in London, it can get tricky. At least I won't go to the pub wearing a Welsh, like, football shirt.
You'll be okay.
Yeah, well, we're seen as like the little brother of like England, like England gives us a lot of flack, but then if someone else picks on us, you guys always stick up for me. Well, you're English, so technically, aren't you?
Yeah,
But
I
you
am.
probably spent more time studying in Wales than I did, so
Yeah,
some.
this is a fact. This is a fact. And Cornwall does not yet have a national team, but I think they'd probably go for it if they could.
Yeah, but you got Cornish pasties, which are amazing. Do you know what
Oh
I
yeah, yeah,
mean?
yeah. Well,
That's,
exactly.
you don't need
And
a football team when
copyrighted.
you've got them things. They're blooming lovely, aren't they?
Yeah, it's a
I haven't
secret
had,
weapon.
I haven't had a Cornish pasty in ages. I fancy one.
I
I, you know.
yeah,
Anyway,
anyway. Yeah, when I go home, it's a bit of a disaster zone. But I don't eat them outside of Cornwall. You see, I ban myself.
do
I'm
you?
banned. Yeah.
I actually went to a rugby match and I had a Cornish pasty, so it all kind of fits in, mate.
There you go. The full circle of
Well, there
pasties and
you
sport.
Well, there we go. Well, the
Okay.
absolute terrible football predictions from me. I failed you all. I failed you all. However, I think the conversation was more productive in learning more about AR and VR and XR and all the
All the
MRs and
R's.
all the something R's. But James, you're an absolute legend. I'll bring up your website one more time now. Where can people find you if they want to chat more about augmented reality?
LinkedIn's always a good one. I'm a good LinkedIn dweller, so direct message or invite to connect on there. Or James Lee at urban-xr.com. That'll get me on the email. So yeah.
Lovely. Well, James, thank you for bearing with me and the roofers, and maybe my dodgy connection or your dodgy connection. We
Yeah.
done it, and I've really enjoyed speaking to you. So
It's been
I'm
great.
gonna.
Thank you.
My pleasure, dude. I'm going to end the live stream now. Thank you for you guys as well. I might have a podcast tomorrow. I have to check my diary. But more content coming soon in the short term. If you want to talk anything augmented reality or mixed reality, then James and his company is definitely a good place to start. Thank you so much, James. I'm going to end the live stream now. And have a good rest of the day, everyone. Try to survive. Halfway there. And don't ask me about the sports. I won't be very good at that. See you
Cheers.
later.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.